Welcome. Our official clock is a minute or two slow, but I'd like to call the August 2nd meeting of the Town of North Topsail Beach Board of Aldermen to order. I am Mike Benson, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm sitting in as chair today for Mayor Joanne McDermott, who is at a professional meeting this week. The weather report I saw where she is was 105 and fire smoke in town, but anyway.
But no humidity. It's a dry day.
All right, so let's move on. Our first item of business now is invocation. Would you please stand while Alderman Leonard gives invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please pray with me. Heavenly Father, we ask that you bless this town and keep it a beautiful and friendly place to live. We pray for your guidance to enable this board to work together in unity to make fair and informed decisions today. We also pray that our police officers, firefighters, and members of our armed services here and around the world remain safe as they risk so much for our safety. We further ask that you keep an especially watchful eye on our forward deployed service members who are serving in harm's way, as so many of them at various times have called North Topsail Beach their home. We also pray for our country's veterans who are struggling, as approximately 17 of them lose their personal battle every day to the invisible wounds of war. Finally, we pray that our town be spared the ravages of hurricanes and other natural disasters, and that everyone associated with the town remains safe and secure. We ask this in his name. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hoorah.
Thanks.
Okay. Next item is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Alderman Leonard. Second, Alderman Grant. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The agenda is approved. Manager's report, please. Manager Durgan.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Good morning, everyone. First, I would like to start off with an announcement. I'm pleased to welcome and announce Ms. Wendy Conant, who is our new project facilitator code enforcement officer, who's sitting in the back with us today. She comes to us having worked in South Carolina for several years, many years as a code enforcement officer, investigator with the Sheriff's Department, and also worked as a paralegal. So very happy to have her on board. So we welcome you. And one of the projects that she's working on right now is working to prepare and finalize the draft for the light ordinance that will be presented to the board in the upcoming month. So welcome. Beach projects, Sea Oats, waiting on confirmation from TI Coastal through Coastal Transplants that the Sea Oats project has been completed. I've also asked TI Coastal to go ahead and do a drive-through just to confirm everything's done and nothing was missed. So I expect to report that will be closed out officially at the next meeting. The Army Corps letter of acknowledgement. I provided a letter of acknowledgement to the Army Corps regarding their intent to construct the Surf City portion of the Coastal Storm Risk Management Project for the town of Surf City. Based on discussions with the district and the town of Surf City, there will be a transition between the two towns that extends approximately 1,000 feet into the southern town limit of North Topsail Beach and include a tapered placement of sand in this transition area. The town of Surf City will be securing any necessary easements. The intent of the letter was to, one, acknowledge the project and to say we will assist in communications with residents at the appropriate time regarding the portion of the project occurring in North Topsail Beach. So once I have further communication from them on the project timeline, I will certainly be conveying that to the board and to the residents so that everyone's aware, so they're not surprised and taken off guard receiving a letter from the town of Surf City, so that we're on the same page. Annual monitoring, this was completed in June, and Fran has been working on a beach-wide volume comparison with last year's survey numbers. Fran's presentation I'm going to have pulled from the consent agenda at the next meeting in September for everyone to have an opportunity to review and discuss further. The nourishment benefits in Phase 1 and Phase 5 are evident, and there also appears to be some nourishment spreading benefits into Phase 4 as well. The beach and marina way, which is in Phase 2, lost material in addition to the beach access 4 area, which is the county beach access that we just restored the dune in, which is in Phase 3. Overall, an additional 424,000 cubic yards gain in sand was measured, largely due to our recent renourishment efforts. So that's the positive part. I've also provided the board a table showing the volume change between the annual monitoring. So I would just ask that you take a more in-depth look at that between now and the next board meeting, so that when Fran does his presentations, you can ask any questions at that point in time and discuss further. The environmental impact statement with the Army Corps of Engineers. I had our monthly EIS call with the Army Corps that was held last Thursday, along with the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem. Chapter 4 has been received and reviewed by Army Corps as scheduled, and Dow Cordy is expected to have chapters 5 and 6 submitted by August 15th. I've already scheduled another meeting scheduled for August 30th to make sure that those deadlines were met, and then we can review everything and changes, any changes that are taking place in the schedule. So far, they're saying that we're still on track at this point in time. The second annual Christmas tree lighting, Wednesday, November 15th, has been chosen as the date. It'll be held at 6:00 p.m. here at Town Hall once again. This is around the same time of the year that we had it last year, and it didn't conflict with any surrounding areas or any other celebrations. And we had an excellent turnout, so we chose the same date.
One quick question.
Sure,
Will we have the snowflakes up at that time too?
we can, yes.
And Alice, have you arranged for Santa Claus to be there as well?
Of course.
Very good.
I heard you were going to be Santa Claus.
Also, since the last board meeting, I've ordered and received a 2-foot extension onto the Christmas tree for this year. So it'll be bigger, but it will be in the same location we had it last year, out on the platform right outside of Town Hall, so that you see it when you come across the bridge. The recycling pilot project, I reported at the Board of Aldermen meeting at the last meeting that I've been in communication with a company called My Matter to do a pilot recycling project at Richard Peters Park, and with expected rollout in August. I'm happy to report we're on schedule for that. We've been working to get the Wi-Fi in place, which is expected to be completed this week, and the unit is scheduled to be deployed next week. So I expect to have that rolled out this coming month as planned. The unit again holds 2 23-gallon containers and uses AI to sort what goes into it by determining what is trash and what is recycling. Again, pilot project is free to test. I will be reporting on this initiative further and considering recommendations after this installation. These units can determine and notify us when containers are full, provide monthly data and sustainability reports. And of course, the bigger picture is to see how the company progresses with building larger units and to see how we can incorporate them at the beach access points. That would be the ultimate goal. Any questions?
Any other questions for manager?
Okay, just one. I know it's included in the consent agenda. You feel pretty good about what I've seen so far for the financial results for this past year. Look like we did pretty well against budget,
Yes,
right?
yes, very well.
Okay.
Okay, next item on our agenda is open forum. We have one person signed up, Susan Meyer. Would you please come up and give us your comment? Thank you.
Yep, I'm not a rookie. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for letting me have the opportunity to speak today. I am actually speaking on behalf of the Planning Board in reference to streaming our meetings. We had a discussion, and we feel that it could restrain some of our conversation as we try and work through some contentious issues before we come to a decision to recommend to the board on a particular issue. And we would just like for you all to take that into consideration, because ultimately you all make the decision anyway. And it is in public and streamed and videotaped so that it can be reviewed later for the final consideration for anything. So that's really all I had to say, and thank you.
All right, thank you, Susan. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to come forward? Jeff? Go ahead and give us your name, Jeff.
Jeff Meyer, 2224 New River Inlet Road. I would like the board to take in consideration, or the town to take in consideration, possibly holding a meet and greet with the candidates that are up on the ballot. I think it'd be a perfect opportunity. We have the facility. I think it would be beneficial to all. So possibly some of the garbage that goes back and forth on Facebook could end. And I would just like to see the town host one. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Anyone else like to make a public comment? Okay, if not, we are ready for the public presentation and hearings, and I would like to invite Frankie Howard, CEO of Onwassa, to come up and introduce the fellow that is with him and make whatever presentation you have to make for us. Welcome, Frankie.
Sir. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. As you pointed out, I do have Matt Padgett with me. He's our facilities administrator. Yes, so he's very familiar with the distribution side of Onwassa, so he's over that part with us, and he'll be over this booster station once we get it up and running. David couldn't be here. He was going to actually fill in for me today, but he had fell sick this week and is still out, so I've restructured my schedule so I could be here. I do have handouts on the booster pump, and I'd like to pass those out.
Drawings or the site plan?
Either one, I can talk to either one. So what David was going to share with you was the latest drawings showing the easements that will be required. This will be part of the partnership we'll need with the town to allow this booster station to be here. So it'll show the temporary and the long-term easements. I think there was a question about the rendering as well. If there's any questions about that, I'd be glad to talk through them. But I think at a later date, we were going to have the board consider that and approve it so that we can proceed with this project. At this point, we are looking at taking this project out to bid in September, I think is what my notes are. Yep, advertised for bid September 2023. Currently, we have submitted for permits through NCDOT and Public Water Supply. We hope to have our permits in hand by August 28th, so the end of this month. Are there any questions on the easement at this point? If not, I think I shared with you the renderings because there were some questions about that. If you can pull those up.
I would just add that staff has looked at the proposed plans. We've looked at it, planning looked at it, fire and police, and there are no issues with it.
Thank you. Yes, and we've met down here a few times with staff to kind of go through some amendments to where it was going to be located. I will say, and while I was looking at this, I noticed we did shift the actual water line, I guess, north, if you will, or west on the other side of the driveway, so we wouldn't interfere with the driveways to the town hall and have to dig up anything. So we'll be on the outside edge of the road, from what I understand. The rendering is pulled up now. There was a question about that, so I wanted to be able to show the latest one. I think the only thing that's changed since before was that we took the windows out for safety purposes.
What will it look, it would, to me, would be, because it's going to be fairly close to Town Hall, that it reflects some of the architecture of the
Yes.
Town Hall. Right now, it looks just like kind of a plain
Yes.
shed.
I think, and if you remember the previous one that was presented, it had like a yellow color to it, so we black and white in this one. He did take some pictures last time he was here, and they're going to do some matching, just like you mentioned, of the town hall, so it looks like it's just part of the facility here,
Yeah.
and it won't stand out.
Can you also address the noise level?
Yes, so I did ask Matt and some of the others, and Jeffrey, who's the engineer of this project. We don't anticipate there to be any noise beyond the walls of the facility. I don't think you'll be able to hear it. It doesn't have a built-in generator. We will have a plug-in option for a generator we have on standby. So I mean, in times that we'd have to run it by generator, that would be the most noisy it would be, but you wouldn't be able to hear the pumps.
Does the pump run continuously, or does it cycle on and off?
This one is going to be set up on controls, so it'll be at a certain pressure level. It'll cut it on, and it'll be a variable speed drive as well, so it'll ease on to a
So-
certain pressure.
Unlike my AC at home, when it cuts on with a bang, this thing will cut on silently? That's what
It
you're
will
saying?
it will be a variable speed, the way I understand it, so it will come on slowly, so it won't be like all of a sudden.
It won't ramp up. It just
Okay.
cuts on a gradually built up.
Okay.
How much traffic back and forth do you anticipate while it's up and running? And also, will there be big vehicles parked back there or anything?
So during construction, there'll be obviously that, and that's why we have the temporary easement, construction easements, but once it's operational, what would be our schedule for checking it?
We'll probably check it daily. So it'd be a small truck, service truck or something like that.
But it'll be able to be operated remotely, so we wouldn't have to come to it to turn it on.
It would be similar to the station we have out onto this adjacent here with Ploris, the same
The one by the bridge.
type. No, right out here on town property.
And what's the power source? If you just said you hooked up a generator, what's the power for the generator?
It would be, the generator that we would
I'm
bring would
assuming
be,
that's a backup if power
it would
goes
be a
out, right?
diesel
So-
generator.
Oh, it's diesel? Okay.
Our backups are diesel.
And how big a tank you putting in?
This is on a trailer, it mounted,
So
I'm
you
not
just
sure.
bring it in?
Yeah,
Yeah. Our standards are probably 200 kWs with 237.
Okay, so you'd roll the diesel in when you knew there was a problem?
if there was a power outage,
That's,
yeah.
okay.
The other question that I had, Frankie, was the police have storage units out there. Would they still be able to use storage under the building since it's going to be up off the ground? Is there any reason?
That is the plan still. It'll be made where we can allow storage underneath.
Yeah,
There'll be some doors on it.
that was one of the main things we were concerned about, because we're very limited on space here, and the police department has already worked to eliminate some of the boxes back there, so we've already been working on that this past year, with the intent that we will have a storage area for a PD under there.
I believe that Mayor McDermott, the last time reps were here, maybe it was a year ago, she raised the question, I'll just raise it again, booster pump versus a water tower. And the answer back then was booster pump. But if we look at your monthly newsletter and the water bills, you just reported that you've gotten 14,000 new water customers in the past year, which is quite a number. And over here on Topsail Island, we're on pilings, and so, you know, pressure up to what would be the second, third, and in some cases fourth floor. is the booster pump going to be able to maintain the pressures that we expect versus, you know, a water tower to maintain pressure in those residences in the condominiums?
I will say this, in my mind, a water tower is not 100% out of the question. I know historically it hasn't been favored for this area simply because of being on the coast. We are in the process of updating our water model. So we'll have a new firm come on board and help us understand the latest impacts, not only this booster pump will have, but the tower that we do have out on 210, is it sufficient to supply it? Do we need an additional tower or additional booster pumps ahead of this booster pump station? So I won't rule it out completely. I know, again, it hasn't been a favorable option, but I think it's definitely something to consider. You do bring up a good point. You know, we maintain or attempt to maintain a certain PSI to the meter. It is a bigger challenge to get that pressure, you know, up several stories. And so we have made recommendations through new construction projects and some retrofits to put in boosters in these larger structures that have to take them up several floors to supply multiple units with water pressure.
I want to follow up on Mike's comment.
And then I want to
Right.
follow it up on it too, so.
Go ahead, Mike. Turn the mic on.
Too many mics. I think people get a little bit confused. This is not a supply thing. This is a pressure issue.
Right.
You've still got the issue, I think, on supply. Because, you know, and as you and I discussed, you have to think about the water line is a straw. And right now, if you're in the north end of the island and everybody at the bridge is drinking, there's not much left at the end. So, and I think that you've expressed that you're looking at a model which is going to take in, because we've got so much on the other side of the bridge going in, new construction, everything else. Well, this will help from a pressure standpoint. It's not a supply. This
Right.
is not a new supply.
Right. It's taking existing supply and helping move it within our distribution system. So we are looking at additional projects. We do have currently two connections to the island, one right here
Right.
at the bridge and one further north. The problem with the one at further north, although it's very helpful and it helps when we have to turn this particular line off, it is fed by a 6-inch and an 8-inch line. So there are some limitations between that connection and our main line back out on 210. So one of the additional projects we're going to look at is extending that 12-inch to that second connection so that we can increase the supply.
Because I think that, you know, two things. Everything you're talking about, and I'm glad that you guys are planning this, is in the future. There's no fix tomorrow
Absolutely.
for what we're talking about. So whether it's the station, whether it's supply or whatever, you're modeling that stuff out. I don't know if you're aware of this, but at the last county commission meeting, a couple of those commissioners started talking about doing a moratorium on this because they're so concerned about
The growth.
infrastructure, power, water, sewer, everything. And so I'm assuming you share you know, I mean, as Mike said, the growth that you're seeing right now is off the charts. And
It is.
we like to say here, nobody's building a 1,500-foot, you know,
Not
cabin
anymore.
here
No.
anymore. So if you
Yeah,
could
and
address that, appreciate it.
just,
Okay.
just
And
for,
Alderman Leonard, I think you had a question.
Can he answer my question first?
I'll make some comments. Yeah, so we certainly are looking at the supply. I mean, just looking at the number, we grew 12% year over year in just the Dixon service area alone. So that's quite a bit more than, say, the demographer estimates this area to grow. So we do participate in the TRC meetings at the county level so we can give input when there's projects being developed in our service area. And we are looking at 3 additional raw water wells that will supply the Dixon plant. And then we're also looking at some capacity expansions at the Dixon plant to hopefully take it to 6 MGD versus the 4 that it's designed for now.
Okay, sorry.
So for those of us that are up at the north end, and I believe that north end water supply pipe comes across at Marina Way, right?
It does.
Underneath the
It follows the
ICW?
power lines.
Okay.
Yep.
Is this booster pump going to help the citizens who live north of Marina Way, who I presume are getting their water sourced through that pipe now?
It's a balance for sure. I mean, it goes either way. So this particular booster pump will be designed to pump both directions or one or the other, depending
Okay.
on what situation we may be in. I think the design is also to put a check valve in on on the, would it be on the main, Marina Way, so that we're not forcing water back over onto the mainland. And so it will definitely help past Marina Way, the way I understand it now. I'm not an engineer, but that's just part of what we were designing it to do.
Thanks.
Okay, Alderman Fontana.
Yeah, and you may have gone over this at the last time, and you mentioned the bid going out in September. Can you recap the timeline for the whole project?
Yes, and I'll be the first to admit, when I was here a year ago, the timeline was quite different, and I'm not satisfied with where we are with the timeline, but I've shared that internally. So we are behind on getting it bid out. I was originally hoping it was going to be bid out in May, but now we're talking about September. So I think what the engineer shared with me, we were looking at construction notice to proceed in November of 2023, so towards the end of the calendar year. Currently, that's the schedule, and then, of course, hopefully have it up and running before peak season begins 2024. And if you look at the chart, so I had shared with me last week from our water production side, from April to September or August, we more than triple the water usage out here on the island. So on a regular, 8 months out of the year, we're sitting pretty good, but there is that peak demand that we experience. So we'll hopefully be ahead of that next year. I was hoping that it was going to be done this year, but it wasn't. Just to add to kind of what we've done, and I don't know if this was shared with the board earlier, but over in the July 4th holiday, when we felt the biggest issues, demand on the system, we switched roughly 1,050 metered customers over to our Surf City connection. Most of those are in Surf City, the part that's over in Onslow County. I think there are a few, I'm not sure how many, that are on the North Topsail Beach side. But just to give you a perspective, we have just over 3,000 metered connections on the island, so it was nearly a third got switched over to the Surf City connection. And so we feel like that made an immediate impact on the demand over here on the island. So we're hoping that will help us until we get some additional projects underway. There is an issue with that connection, and it's fed through a 4-inch meter. It was put in 1996, so it's been there for a while. We reversed that meter. It was initially set up to feed Surf City from Onslow County. We're expecting bids to come back on Friday to increase that, put additional vault in place to put an 8-inch meter on that connection. And then that connection's also going to be able to go both ways ultimately when it's finished, so we can supply Surf City or they can supply us in an emergency situation. So.
Okay, any other questions? One more, Alderman Leonard.
What impact is all this high-density residential development that's going on the other side of this bridge going to have on all of this in terms of our water pressure? And I'm specifically thinking about when you drove out here, all of that construction of those apartments that's on,
It's certainly going to have an impact, and that's why, quite frankly, we need to have a water model done to make sure when we put the booster pump here, we're not taking away from, just across the bridge, so to speak. And Director McDermott mentioned that in our last meeting at the Onwassa board. She's concerned about both areas. So that's why we're considering a booster pump at the water tower right there on 210 to take it from there and push it, because I think it goes about 3 ways from there. So we'll supply it when this booster pump comes online.
Some point in time, the county's going to have to weigh in because this is out of control. It's out of control, and I know this isn't on you at all, sir, but they're permitting and approving all this stuff, and I think they're taxing an infrastructure system that's already overtaxed as it is. And I know you go to the meetings, and I don't know what how this is all shaken out up there, but somebody's got to put the brakes on this somewhere. And again, it's not you, sir. And on top of that, I'd like to thank you for when I called the mayor and said, hey, I got this problem out at the house with my water, and you sent your guys out like the next day.
Yep.
And they did a great job, and I was like 2 PSI at my water spigot at the house, lower than what I am at the meter, so it's not inside my system.
Right.
But I was down in the 30s, and it means that when you're pushing it up to a 2nd-story kitchen sink that's on 14-foot pilings, You're
It's
really
tough.
pushing it up.
Yep. You lose
Yeah.
pressure every time you go up one floor.
And that's the issue I raised earlier. Here on the island, we're all on pilings, whereas on the mainland, we're talking about houses on concrete slabs or crawl spaces, so there's not that, if you got pressure at the meter, you're good in the house for the most part. Here, it's a little bit different story,
is.
and you've addressed that with the idea of residential booster pumps, but.
They do make those, yes, sir.
Yeah, and having input, I don't know, town manager or a rep from North Topsail Beach being part of your long-range planning group, just to be aware of the uniqueness of North Topsail Beach and houses on pilings and water requirements would, I think, be good for the future if it could be arranged.
Absolutely.
And I will add too that I have made a request that Frankie's on as well, to the county for a meeting to sit down to talk about the the development that's going on in the path forward. So
Yeah.
we're waiting to hear back on them for a confirmation on a day and time.
Okay, good.
And then to address Tom's issue, this came up at the last county meeting because they actually turned down a couple of
They did.
of projects. Okay, and a couple of the commissioners were like, maybe we just need to stop it. They actually talked about doing a moratorium and stop issuing stuff because of the concerns that they had, which I think is, a pretty substantial step to take. But I think you guys are aware of it too, because
We are.
you're talking about 12%. There's no model that shows the growth that you guys have gotten.
No.
Now, your next model will, but this one won't.
Right.
And the problem you got is it's if you're, and we used to talk about this in the unit, and the demand per unit in a 1,500 square foot house with one bathroom is completely different than a 10 bath, 10 bedroom house, that's all the way up. And that's what's
what
being
we're
built
saying.
now.
Or apartments.
Complex,
Yeah.
which is like the third one.
Yep. But I think the issue is, and you and I talked about this before, is it's not just a pressure issue.
No, it's a supply.
Okay, and that's the distinguish. There's nothing, not that you guys aren't doing your job, there's nothing that's available to fix this tomorrow.
Right.
Okay, and you're probably talking many, many months or even years before you can get your hand, because there's nothing you can do. I mean, it's, and I mentioned him before, is out west, you have to buy water shares before you can hook up your house, which is different than here.
Right.
So,
So I think we would just like to be at the table.
Yeah, absolutely,
for
yeah, as Alice
discussions in the
mentioned.
future. I think the town manager's already made that initiative, so. Any other questions from the board? Mr. Howard, Mr. Paget, we really appreciate your time today. You've been
Yeah,
honest with us.
absolutely.
We've talked about a lot more than just the booster pump, and
Yes.
we appreciate you being here to lead that discussion with us, so thank you very much.
Absolutely. And I'll hang around if there's any more questions, so thank you.
Okay. Our next agenda item is closed session as per North Carolina General Statute 143, 318-.1, paragraph 3. We're going to consult with our attorney on employment or retainment of public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between attorney and the public body, which privilege is hereby acknowledged. So unfortunately, all that means that we're going to have to ask the audience to take a hopefully very short break while we have our closed session, and then we will invite you back into the meeting.
You need a motion?
Thank you. Attorney Eads, there's something I'm supposed to say when we come out of closed session? No action was taken, but there's some code numbers we need to say, right? Okay, we've come out of closed session, no action was taken. Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Alderman Plettle. Second?
Second.
Alderman Grant, I heard first, so thank you, Alderman Grant. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Consent agenda is approved. Let me get my, continuing business, memorandum of understanding with the Department of Transportation, Bike Lanes, Manager Durian.
Yes, thank you. As you're aware, we've been going back and forth with the Department of Transportation on getting a memorandum of understanding in place for the proposed bike lanes that the board had allocated money in the budget for with proceeding. As you recall, we did slate $100,000 into the budget for the planning purposes to get this project started, but we've been going back and forth trying to tighten up the memorandum of understanding. The last version that I received is I included on the agenda, which shows the some of the last changes that have been made, just so that you can track those. We do have a clean copy today as well, should the board decide to go forward. Mr. Eads has reviewed the document and provided his suggestions already, which are incorporated into that document. So are there any questions at this point? I know we discussed it in the past, but
Do you need a motion of any kind? Or
yes,
anything?
if the board is ready to proceed, we will need a motion to move forward with the memorandum of understanding is.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a pet project of mine, and I really definitely think we need to proceed. I was, like I said earlier, I was in New Jersey last week in a small community on a barrier island, much like North Topsail Beach, and there was bike lanes everywhere, and quite frankly, there was more bicyclists than car traffic. I just think it adds to the quality of the whole experience of your vacation, coming to a beach and feeling free and not feeling jeopardized on the roads. I know we've got it on Island Drive, but North Topsail Beach, every time I go down that road, it's you see bicyclists, and it's just, I'm tickled to death. And maybe 4 years before we get this finally built, but this is the first step, and I definitely make a motion that we adopt a memorandum of understanding as submitted.
And I'd like to second that.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Leonard. All in favor of the
Oh,
motion?
I'd like to discuss.
Discussion, sorry.
I think this is a long time coming. This is something the board has worked on for actually many years. I remember back in the early 2000s it was brought up, and even though the roads belong to the state, I'm glad that we're finally being able to move forward with it. It's a safety concern as much as it is a recreation concern, and I'm so pleased that we're almost there, or getting there.
Alderman Leonard?
We,
And it is, go ahead.
go ahead.
I just wanted to add too that there's language in there that allows us to modify it as we proceed through the process, so I just wanted to point that out. And then, of course, also that this is for design and surveys and permitting. So there will be additional discussions down the road. This is just for this initial phase one of the project. So when we get closer towards permitting and easements and then construction, there will be additional discussions and additional funding that's necessary.
I bike on that road every week, and we need this. We need it badly. I think just from a public safety standpoint, we need it, as well as for our vacationers and our residents. I can tell you that Connie's correct in that probably back 2019, went to Raleigh and sat down with our then representative, Phil Shepard, about this very issue and about the potential of incorporating the widening of the road into the resurfacing at the next level, or at the next iteration, which is right where we are now. So it's good to see that we're really getting somewhere with it, and I really appreciate all the work that Fred's done for the town and the board on this issue.
And I would parrot that with one just caveat for people to understand that I think we're all in favor of this, but there may be some issues with the bridge and some stuff down there in terms of what can and can't be done. Because this is gonna be a resurfacing project if it goes forward, not a bridge widening type of thing.
No.
But I think it's absolutely necessary and a major step forward if we can move it, and thanks for that.
There's actually more shoulder to ride a bike on those bridges than there is the road.
Right.
It's not much, and it won't be as much if the road's widened, but there is something there.
Yeah.
Something's better than nothing. So we got a motion?
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, new business. Policy related to Board of Aldermen committees and meeting streaming. Attorney Eads.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'll say I wanted to clarify what the board's direction is with respect to live streaming these meetings. It was my understanding from the motion, or the discussion at least, that the Board of Adjustment and the Board of Aldermen meetings were going to be live streamed. It was my understanding that we were going to record the planning board, but that would not be live streamed, and that we would keep that we would have a link on our town website to that recording, and keep that recording for a period of 6 months or until the minutes of that meeting were approved. Is that accurate? And then on the BISAC committee, I believe that was the same as the planning board. We were going to record it.
No, that one was going to be posted after the meeting.
And
Recorded in perpetuity.
right, that's what we're doing with the planning board, with the exception of the 6 months.
The way this works is, with BISAC, what we talked about is, we wanted that to be posted and stay, and not be deleted. The planning board, okay, would be recorded, okay, not live streamed, but recorded. Once, and then we would not keep the recording more than 6 months, or, okay, the shorter of that, or when the minutes are done and approved. So if the planning board comes up with a set of minutes and it's approved and everything else, then you don't need the tape anymore.
So the meetings would not be posted on the website?
No, except for BISAC. BISAC would.
That's where my confusion was. Okay.
All right, so can we take it from the top again? Let's take them one at a time. The policy with respect to the Board of Aldermen meetings is that we live stream them and keep them. The policy for the Board of Adjustment meetings is that we live stream those meetings and keep them. The policy for the planning board is that we record them, do not post them, and we keep them until the minutes are approved, or 6 months. Okay. And the policy for the BISAC is we record them and post them and keep them forever. Darian, is that? I'm just saying, is that clear enough for, I mean, because there's, okay. Madam Clerk, is that clear enough? Because I was the one that was confused, so I want to make sure and make the situation worse. We good?
That was my understanding of the last meeting.
Okay, all right. So we don't need any action on that. I mean, that's the consensus of the board? Yep. Okay.
I just want to say that I think that the more open that we can keep everything for our citizens and whoever else happens to be watching. The sunshine laws make a lot of stuff very clear, and I just think that it's good to have open government. The more that people can see, the better.
You're not posting the planning board meetings, just
So-
make sure.
No, but if somebody wants them, they can get them, and then they
For
can
6
access.
months.
Is there a
So,
reason
wait a
we're
minute,
not
wait,
posting the
wait.
I
planning-
still don't think everyone's.
We're still not quite clear on that. What do you mean you can get them?
We're retaining them under Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah, Public Records Act, actually.
So
Under
they
the Public
will
Record
n-
Act, any recording that we've got, you can get access to. What we're saying is, we're not gonna keep the recording as something in perpetuity like we're doing with the Board of Aldermen or the Board of Adjustments. We're using it to be able to create minutes for the planning board, to be able to, and then the minutes will be kept in perpetuity, okay? But the recording will be used for the purpose of creating the minutes.
Is there a reason not to keep the recording though? I mean, we must have unlimited storage on it or something. I would think that, because the minutes are just a synopsis. If the board ever wanted to go back and say, well, what were they talking about last year on the planning board? And we go back and we read the minutes, but maybe there's nuances in there that if we wanted to actually look at the recording and see a little more. I don't know why we wouldn't keep them for in perpetuity.
Alderman Leonard?
Our policy is not consistent.
But
Our
keep-
policy is not consistent across the board with all these meetings, and I know that all of them are different, but I think we need to be mindful of the fact that my observation is our policy is not consistent.
And I don't disagree with it. I think, let's keep in mind, the reason that we treated planning board a little bit different was because of the feedback from the planning board people about that kind of stuff. I have personally have no problem with live streaming everything, keeping the recordings and everything else. It's public record and whatever. And I think Susan talked about that before. The concern was that it would hurt their deliberations, but the reality is it's open to the public anyway. So if I have no problem with keeping those recordings and just retaining the records. The only difference would be whether you're live streaming those meetings, okay, or not. And I think that Brian had said before, particularly on the Board of Adjustments, because they are quasi-legal proceedings, that having those records, forever was a good thing and open.
Alice, is the planning board allowed to go into closed session like we do if they have deliberations that may be of a sensitive issue?
No.
No.
I mean, if they have a legal question and I'm there, or a lawyer hired by the town is there, arguably they could, but as an advisory board, I can't recall ever going into closed session with the planning board.
My confusion on your statement was that I thought the planning board recording would be posted until the minutes were available, and then the posts would be removed. That's different than not posting them, and rather than asking the public to come through a public records request to actually see the recording.
Brian, can you attend the planning board meetings?
If asked, I could.
Because I don't think you can go you can't go to an executive session if you don't have counsel there, I don't think, right?
Right, but I don't.
And I don't think there's a problem, Mike, with posting them, is there? I think that's just what we talked about last time, and it was based upon Hannah's feedback and Susan's feedback about their deliberations. I agree with Connie. I could care less whether these, I love the fact these are live streamed. And I like the fact that it's open and, all the information is here. I have no problem with everything being live streamed and everything being posted and kept. But I think we just, at the last meeting, I think Hannah brought it up and Susan brought it up again about her concern about the planning board type of stuff, but posting it, Mike, I have no problem with at all.
Well, when you're when you're in a meeting and having discussions, doesn't matter what the committee is, you go through lots of variations on what you're discussing, and you do it in a way that is open and, you know, if you had 50,000 people sitting in the audience, it's no different than having one person in the audience listening to what you're saying. So I guess I don't understand what the objection would be to keeping the planning board meetings not posted on the website for people to come back and review if they had a question about what went on.
Yeah, I think part of the, I think Connie is absolutely right. A lot of sometimes in the minutes, without saying things, I think sometimes when you kind of massage the minutes, for lack of a better word, so that some people look a little bit better, or some comments aren't misinterpreted. I think the full recording is better, and I agree with Mike. It might as well be posted. If you got it, post it forever. But I definitely agree with Connie on the some things on the minutes get maybe left out or written slightly different than really what may have happened.
I just want to address the comment about the minutes being massaged. I mean, I will say that the town clerk takes the minutes, and the minutes are distributed for any inaccuracies or for feedback. So, and those changes, if there's any to be made, if there's any mistakes, they're corrected before the minutes are adopted.
Yeah. And I'm not, massage may have been the wrong word, but I think they
Misinterpreted.
that's a better word, misinterpreted, not massaged to be a devious, misinterpreted, or, not even that's not correct,
They're not verbatim.
thank you.
Why don't we
Their
just,
summary.
That's the
you
better
know,
word.
we get, this is the same circle we talked in last time. Why don't we just agree, keep the recordings, post them on the website, and just go forward from that? The only distinction being that you're not live streaming the planning board,
But you're still,
but you're recording.
so if you're not streaming them and you're recording them and you're posting them to the website, you're still posting them to the website. I just want to make sure everyone's clear on that.
Right.
Even though they're not watching it streamed while the meeting's going on, the meeting would still be posted on the website.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so far, I've heard the consensus from
Okay.
all the board members to do just that.
Okay.
So do we just need a consensus, or do we
We
need to
just got it.
have a,
That, we need a vote since that was part of I thought that was what the policy was from last month, but apparently it wasn't. So if that's the planning board policy, I'd prefer a vote to adopt that as the policy, that we post, if the policy is.
Everything's posted.
All right, so.
Need a motion.
All right, I would move
Before we have the motion, we need either Attorney Eads or the clerk needs to read the motion.
I'll give it a shot. Well, before I do, so are we still doing the 6 months, or are we keeping the planning board meetings forever? Okay. The motion would be to adopt the following policies with respect to the following boards. The Board of Aldermen meetings will be live streamed, posted to the town's website, and kept in perpetuity. The Board of Adjustment meetings will be live streamed, posted to the town website, and kept in perpetuity. The planning board meetings will be recorded, not live streamed. Those recordings will be posted to the town's website and kept in perpetuity. The meetings of the BISAC will be recorded, not live streamed, posted to the town website, and kept in perpetuity.
Yes.
Is there a motion to adopt those policies as stated?
I would move that we adopt that policy.
I would second.
So Alderman Grant made the motion to accept that policy. Alderman Plettle seconded the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Those opposed, same sign.
Yep. And just to summarize what we just said, just very quickly, is keep in mind that even though we're not live streaming those things, live streaming doesn't allow somebody to interact anyway. So we're not
Correct.
really giving up anything. It's still, everything's still there. All the information is still there.
Correct.
Okay, you can look at it, you've got full access to it, all right? So everything's transparent that's happening.
Right. And I'd just add that the Board of Aldermen and the Board of Adjustment do make final decisions, whereas the Planning Board and the BISAC are advisory in nature.
Right. Okay.
But very important boards, just the same. I'm saying the difference is the Alderman, right, final decision-making, yes, sir.
All right. That was unanimous vote? Yep. Okay. Our next item under new business is beach protection, Alderman Grant.
And I will try to make this as short. I mean, I get a lot of feedback from people that they don't like what's happening with new construction, whether it's damaging the dunes. Connie just showed us a picture of a pool that we had before. And so what I would like this board to do, I think by consensus, is direct the town manager to work through the planning director and the planning board to address a couple of issues and to come back to us in a couple of months. One is, while we don't allow houses to be constructed within the 60-foot zone, and just for clarification, it's actually not 60 feet. It's 30 times the erosion rate. So that if you're in an erosion rate that's 5, it's 5 times 30, not 5, it's not 60. But we don't allow building within that, and yet we're allowing pools to be built within that. And the question is, should any construction be done within that setback? Because the things that we're seeing now are, things are being built abutting the dunes, close to the dunes. And I think it's something that with the town putting $40 million worth of sand over the next couple of years into the beach, and with the beach engineer coming back to us, or coming back to BISAC very soon, taking a look at it, he's advised us that he's got to deal with both sides of the dunes, that you can't just put sand on one side of it and think that you're protecting the beach. The question becomes, what steps should we be taking to limit that? I think that it's fair to say anybody that's walked around has seen, I would call them structures, although legally they might not be considered structures under the building code, pools that are being built right up against the dune, where you couldn't do a house with that. And so I would ask that the planning board look at what steps that we can take, whether there should be any construction done within that 60-foot setback. And I would say that the greater of the 60-foot setback or the 5-foot in case the 60-foot doesn't do that, and that come back to us with recommendations as to what we can do to protect the dunes, what we can do to limit, it's not limit the rights of people, but to say, how can we protect the dune structures that we've got? Because I think what we're seeing now, and I think it's been pointed out a number of times, after a storm, and I remember, I think it was Florence walking up north of the county access, I could walk into people's backyards and actually walk across their pools because they were completely underwater. And I think that with all the things that the town's doing, I would ask that by consensus we direct the town manager, working through the planning director and the planning board, to come back, take a look at, again, looking at that 60-foot, that we don't allow construction of homes in, but we're apparently allowing construction of pools, and then come back to us. And I was going to ask if any of the other aldermen wanted to add anything to that, because I'm assuming Connie does.
Thank you, Alderman Grant. Yes, I do. Boy, I'm loud. The pools are a problem when they are within that setback area. We've seen it time and time again. When they end up compromising the dune system, when they end up impacting the environment, when we have the hurricanes come through, and it just decimates not only that pool, but also it hurts the neighboring properties, the properties across the street. We don't want to take pools away, not at all, but we want to make sure that they're done in such a way as not to compromise the integrity of not only that property, but the neighboring properties, the town. We work really hard on the dunes. We spend a lot of money on the dunes and on the beach, and they do provide protection, much like the levees in Louisiana protect those areas. The dunes are our levees, and we can't have anything compromising them in any way. So that's why we'd like the planning board to look at this issue and see what we can do for the protection of the town. We're not trying to take anything away from anybody. We just need to make it safer.
And just one clarification, I'm not suggesting that the planning board ban pools. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. What I'm talking about is when you look at a construction envelope, all right, to anything that's done up against any kind of structure, whether it's a dune or a building or whatever, the closer you get to it, the more you're undermining that structure. And so the question becomes for the planning board is, you know, for example, Topsail doesn't allow any oceanside pools. Other towns have banned them completely. It's not about banning pools, it's not about taking that stuff away, but it's saying how close to this dune can you build? And when you look at some of the things that are being built as pool complexes, again, I'm not looking at the legal side of what that constitutes. When I look at that, that's a structure, okay? And if I can put a pool in with a concrete skirt around it and a fence, okay, and I can put it right up against a dune, I'm not sure how that's any worse than building a house up against a dune. So.
Alderman Leonard?
I'd just like to add to what Connie said, and Rick, and I think the word here that we're looking for is balance. Okay, we need to achieve a favorable balance that protects the town, protects the dune line, protects the dune structure, and at the same time doesn't infringe on property rights. The biggest issue that, from a personal perspective, is right after Florence, I rode the beach line, rode up and down the town beach with the then fire chief, and saw all the pools where the dunes had come out, and all the pools were wide open, and it wasn't just, you know, up like at the north end where we historically have erosion problems. It was all the way down to the south end of the town, and we need to figure out a way, like I said, to achieve some sense of balance here to where we're taking the measures we need to take to protect the dune line. That's all I have.
And I think balance is a good word. It was brought to our attention last year. There was an area in Dolphin Shores that was a big issue, and while we haven't talked about it a lot in open session, this has been something that the board has been very concerned about and continue to be concerned about, and we really want the protection of the town to come first.
Yeah, I think in some cases, building a pool might be more destructive than building a house close to the beach. If I remember my civil engineering with having the walls maintaining their integrity. So I think the closer you build to a dune, which is in fact a wall, you are going to risk the wall collapsing, and I think that's what Rick and Connie and everybody else has said. So again, we don't want to ban pools. We just want to make sure that they are located in such a place that it doesn't do any damage to our investment and to the town. So I'll just throw my 2 cents in.
Any other discussion? Manager Durian, do you have I think we have a consensus, or are you okay with what we were asking the planning board to do?
We're looking for something to come back before the board at the October board meeting?
Yes.
A recommendation?
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
I'm not asking that the planning board have everything done, but to come back to us with a recommendation so that they come back and they recommend A, then we would kick it back to the board to put the proper steps in place. Because I think, council, we've got to go through the planning board to change anything we need anyway, correct?
And a public hearing for any development regulation, and this would fall under that category.
That's all I had.
Okay. All right. We are ready for our second open forum. Would anyone like to come back? Susan Meyer.
Do you want me to state my address and everything again? Anyway, Susan Meyer. It's just really a question about the BISAC committee or board. I thought we were going to have a report to the board to vote on a 50-year plan or something. Was I wrong on that?
It got delayed. So Chris, I think Chris had a little bit of a health issue or whatever.
And
he's
he's
going to be presenting it to BISAC, Mike, this month, at the next meeting.
At the August meeting.
At
we
the
will-
August
then
meeting. So then
BISAC
it'll be at September meeting?
Well, that's complicated. Here, let's assume there's two paths. One, BISAC looks at it and says, perfect. Then it comes to the board.
Right.
BISAC comes to it and says, I think you ought to tweak this and this. He makes a change to it. It probably goes back to BISAC before it comes to this board. Our hope is it'll be September. I think the worst case, Mike, would be
October.
October. Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious because
Yep,
I'm
that's a good
anxious to
question.
see.
Me too.
Thank
Me
you.
too.
Okay, I guess we're ready for the, anybody else? Open forum? All right, Attorney Eads, we're ready for your attorney's report.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I do not have a report. The items I needed to address, we've already addressed in closed session.
Okay. The mayor's not here for a report, so I'll give the Mayor Pro Tem's report next. I want to thank those of you watching online for watching online, those of you in the audience for being here. Appreciate very much the representatives, Mr. Frankie Howard and Matt from Onwassa from being here and explaining the situation with the booster pump as well as the overall situation with water concerns in North Topsail Beach. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Concludes my report. I'm going to start with Alderman Grant this time.
Just very briefly, I think I mentioned I went to the county commissioners meeting, and they are facing the same issue. They have started they've actually hired a consultant to do new planning with them. They believe that the current building plan they got is obsolete because of all the construction that's going on, all the infrastructure stuff. And Alice asked me if I would mention to, and I did to Tim, if they would be meeting with us on some of the infrastructure stuff. And so I think it's a group issue, and I think Mike had made the point before to have a seat at the table, and this is very important to the town. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Yes, I want to again appreciate recognize the passing of this memorandum of understanding. This has been on the agenda, well, the project has been on the agenda for 20-some years. The memorandum of understanding has been on the agenda for at least 6 months. But I think it's been 6 months that have been well spent. We've had good opportunity for input from all the board members, from Brian, from Alice. I think, the first one we had a lot of questions on, and rather than jump signing something, I think we did due diligence, and I think now we have a document that we can move forward with. And again, I just appreciate everybody's input and looking forward eventually to seeing this project completed.
Push to talk. First, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out and those that are watching on the live feed. I really appreciate the brief, gentleman from Onwassa. We appreciate the partnership that we have with you. And as I said to Mr. Paget when we broke to go into closed session, I know whenever I've called with any issues, your guys are out, if not that day, the very next. And they're always real easy to deal with and very, very positive and helpful. And hopefully we'll working together on all this and we'll get through it. But we really do appreciate everything you do for us. I want to talk a little bit about where we are with the Cobra bill. We've had some developments. Been in discussions with the staff director for the House Natural Resources Committee regarding our bill over the last 30 days. These discussions have been facilitated by Congressman Murphy's staff. It looks now that there's going to be sometime this fall an overall Cobra package put together in the House that's going to take all these separate bills and combine them into one. And according to the staff director for this Natural Resources Committee, to use her words, that is to insulate this bill from the Democrats. Okay? So not my words, those are hers. But the best thing about this is that something is happening, rather than just having a bill that was filed and it sits there and no issues with it, or it gets one or two steps into the subcommittee process and then dies there, because bills die in subcommittee every session. Again, primarily because of Ray Celeste up in Congressman Murphy's office, on his staff. They're knocking on doors, they're talking to people, they're sending emails, they're making phone calls, and things are still happening. And with any luck this fall, there'll be a hearing on this combined bill, and we will be invited up to testify at the hearing and explain exactly why it is that the North Topsail Beach's Cobra areas should have not been put in Cobra to begin with, and all the detriment that it's caused us over the years. And so hopefully that'll keep going on, and I'll keep apprising everybody as things get changed. I mentioned in my invocation about veteran suicide. There was an issue earlier this summer with a suicide in the Food Lion parking lot over in Surf City. And that young man had 2 Purple Hearts. And that concludes my report.
Alderman Plato.
I want to thank everybody for coming out and watching at home, and thank you for the Onwassa people for coming also. I am so pleased that the town continues to move forward the way it has. I'm especially pleased with the bike path, because I think that's going to make a big difference. Thank you, Alice, and the whole staff for everything you do. And I also really want to thank the first responders. I'm out on the beach every day. I see you guys going by and taking care of all sorts of issues, and it really means a lot that you keep this town safe. It just really does. As for the turtles, we have 102 sea turtle nests on the island at this time. A little more than half of them in North Topsail Beach. Not that it's a competition. The sea turtle season runs through the end of this month, the nesting season. They'll be hatching up until probably about the end of October. So remember, please leave your oceanfront lights and stuff off. We do have Turtle Talks in here on Tuesdays at 9 o'clock. Everybody's invited to come. It lasts about 45 minutes, and it's just been a tremendous thing for the town and for the turtles. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Alderman Leonard, second.